Welcome back to this little series about me building a welding table, a fabrication table, a fabric cobbling station. In the first episode I made the frame, and in the second episode I put the slats on the frame, and in this episode, well, let's see if we have a leg to stand on. If you haven't seen any of the previous episodes, I would highly recommend that you go back and watch them, but hey, you can do what you want. Without any further syllables, let's get on with it. Today, in the Empire of Dirt, I'm going to attempt to build the legs. If this would be just a simple project, not really too simple, but if it was a simple project, I just weld on some legs in the corners and I'd make some adjustable feet on it, basically just some bolts and some nuts, and that would be it. I could adjust the table and it would stand it just here, just fine. However, I don't want this table to be a permanent fixture in the workshop. I want it to be movable and I want it to be foldable. So the legs need to be foldable. And movable means that it needs to have some form of wheels on it, because as buff as I am, especially my single muscle here, I can't lift this table and move it around just simply. So there needs to be wheels. It needs to be movable, it needs to be foldable, and it needs to be stowable. My idea is that it will be stowed upright against the wall. That way it takes little space and it can be fairly easily put back down. I should probably also mention that the criteria isn't to be able to unfold it and work on it within 30 seconds. It doesn't need to be like one click and things like that and that. The table is going to be brought out for a project, assembled, and it's going to stay there till the project is done, and when the project's done it's going to be folded up and put up against the wall again. So it doesn't need to be one-handed operations or anything like that. To figure out how the legs were going to be folding, I needed to do a little bit of thinking. And thinking is hard, and whilst I sat there in my lotus position thinking about things, my brain just couldn't process it all. So I took the ye old paper and I did some sketches. I did some measurements, took some pictures, and came up with the idea that the welding table should be about 800 to 850 millimeters high from floor to tabletop, which means that the table legs should be about 750 millimeters from the hinge point to the floor. If we then add on a little bit of adjusting screw at the bottom there, it looks like the table legs are going to be about 70 millimeters or so. I also needed to figure out how exactly they were going to fold. The distance of the frame is too short to have the legs fold into each other side by side. They need to fold on top of each other. I have some 50 by 50 angle iron that I'm going to use for the legs. However, I wanted it to be compact too, so I want to be able to make use of all the space that I have. I was trying to figure out how the legs were going to fold onto each other on paper, but I couldn't. My brain just went like, nah, can't do this. So the next step I took was I made a CAD model. CAD stands for Cardboard Aided Design. And this is my CAD model. This here is simulating the tabletop, and here are the legs. I will apply a bit more precision in the actual steel manufacture than the CAD model. So, and also it's not a one-to-one size. The legs will be longer than this. As you can see, here are some castors. Again, not in a very high resolution. So the idea is that I can lift the table up and push it like that. If the table is too heavy, I have designed potential to add another caster down here so that I can lift that up as a jockey wheel and wheel it around. The crucial thing here is that the angle of the angle iron, angle of angle irons is determined in this way, and that means that the non-castored set of legs will fold first, and then the other ones will fold around that. That allows me to have a brace there and a thicker brace here, potentially for the jockey wheel. And the folding should happen some way like this, that you fold those first, put in table like that, and then you fold it like that, and then the table is upright for storage. And for that I've also simulated these castors here. Again, this is not a one-to-one full resolution idea, this is sort of just a mental concept. So the idea is that I can wheel it onto a wall and place it up like that, and then everything will be tickety-boo and we will skip across the fields happily ever after. No? That's not what fabricators do. Okay, we'll go down to the bar and we will arm wrestle about a Peterbilt truck. Okay? Fine. I would much rather skip across the fields. Alright, that's the idea. That's my CAD model. So now I need to figure out exact length of the legs and figure out the pivoting mechanism and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make is first use head to think, then use paper to get to the next stage, and then use advanced technologies like CAD to get to the final stage. But I'm just making it up anyway, so let's get started. If you watched any of the other episodes, this should be quite familiar by now. So cut one end off, square it, then measure the appropriate length, then cut that off and then square that. And hopefully we should have 4 legs that are pretty close to length. I don't know if it's just me, but I find cutting the angle irons to the correct length and marking them especially quite difficult. It feels like I can't get a proper hold of them, can't put them down properly and all that stuff. So yeah, I didn't do a superbly good job with this, but I think as it's adjustable legs, I think it's okay at the end. The leg height adjusters consist of a regular bolt and what's called a coupling or extension nut. It's basically a long nut. Their intended purpose is to connect 2 threaded rods, or all threads as they're also called. If you're a fabric cobbler, I highly recommend you stash a few of these big nuts in your drawers next to your long rods. With perfect hindsight, I should have welded the 2 pairs of legs on top of each other, clamped together. This way I think they would have been a little bit more accurate, but I guess my inner perfectionist will just have to come to terms with this chaos. I've now welded up the 2 pairs of legs. They're only tack welded at this stage, but the nuts are fully welded in there for the adjusters. So now I'm going to turn the welding table upside down so that I can start working on actually attaching these. I need to figure out the hinges and things like that, and it's probably just going to be based on flat bars or angle irons or something like that. It's not going to be something extravagant or complicated. So let's see how heavy this thing is and see if I can actually lift it and move it around. I know this looks like I'm being a total wimp, but I'd rather do that than lie on the garage floor for several hours with a slipped disc in my back. I had no idea how difficult it was going to be to turn this table over, so I was deliberately overcautious. This is the moment when you have to turn theory into practice. The theory is simple. Make a hinge so the legs fold. The practical part is not so black and white. How far off the table should the hinge point be? What about from the end? Where should the hole go in the leg? How do I get it all aligned? How does it all attach? What material should I use? How do I clamp it in an accurate manner? And so forth. This can take quite a lot of brain activity. Brain activity is hard. This here is a locking bolt. There's a captive nut on the back, and this one here is the pivoting bolt. Next step is to get the other set of legs attached. It's all quite crude at the moment, but I don't know if this is going to work yet, so I want to kind of reserve judgment and see if I need to change it before I finish the welding on everything. And now I need to do the same thing again, but as you know, the legs are not the same as the other pair. This means they have to have another style of hinge mechanism, which in turn means more thinking. And yeah, thinking is hard. However, I'm very pleased that I had the Fireball tool welding squares at this point. They made clamping things into place so much easier. I can't recommend them enough for any fabric cobbler. It's now almost 9:30 and I have transferred a lot of the dirt and grinding dust and stuff onto my face, so I need to go wash that off. But the table now has got 4 legs. That is exactly as many as I hoped it would have, and they also fold. The one pair has got the stops installed, the other one doesn't. So tomorrow the first thing I will start with is to make the stops so that it can be locked up in an up position, and then there's the castors and other little details. But yeah, I think that's a good day's work. Let me show you the foldability system. These ones fold down like that, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, and then take the locking bolt out of here, just there to prevent more brain damage to me, and then they fold down like that. And if you put the clamps on, you'll see that it's actually fairly parallel. I'm quite surprised at how parallel it is. I was quite confident that they would scissor like that. I'm pretty pleased with that. So let's continue tomorrow. I'm a bit tired and I definitely need to go wash up. Well, what do you know? We're back. Another day. Let's get on with it. I am now trying to build the stops or the locking bolts or whatever you want to call it for the this pair of legs here, and I didn't really know how to do it. I don't want it to stick up too high or too low, because then when the table is folded they would stick out, and you'd probably just snag yourself on it, resulting in bruises and cuts and whatever. But also it obviously takes space, so I didn't want that. I was a little bit annoyed that I have this angle iron where the hinges are in there, and I could have made it a little bit higher and made a second bolt in there, but I don't know if that would have been strong enough or good enough. And also there's an adjuster bolt right in there for this slat, so I can't cover that one up. So one of the things I thought I would put another piece of the same angle iron here and then bolt in from here, but that would probably make access to that impossible, or at least difficult. So I came up with, I'm going to make a tab here, and I've got these extension nuts here. They're basically a very long nut, and I've put the bolt through, and I've clamped that, so now I'm going to tack it, and then I'm going to try to fold it to make sure I haven't screwed anything up, and if that works then I will fully weld it. But yeah, so the little problems that need to be solved and things need to be taken into account in more than one dimension when you have more than one dimension, i.e. folding table leg who's in several positions. I was sitting here before I started this, folding the legs and going like, oh, I need to trim off this edge, I need to scratch where the edge. So now I basically made the legs non-foldable. So I just need to get the bolts out and take the legs off and grind an arc on the bottom there. But I could have scratched the arc in before I welded these things on. You know, I like to think that I have a very good memory, but it's a little bit short. The next thing I need to figure out is how to mount the castors on here. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to put in the height adjusting screws on there, and then I'm going to see how the castors will mount to there. This here is my tab maker template. It's a 3D printed thing. I designed it in Fusion 360. I've already done these, but I'll show you on the other side. So you put the flat bar into here, and now you can score the round, the semicircle there, and then you can score a cutoff line, and then you center punch the hole there, like that. So now you can cut the tab out and you have an exact or pretty exact tab that you can use. And I've got I need to make 8, so I've scored the ends of these ones, so I'll drill them. I'll cut off the excess on the corner, and then I grind them, and then I'll cut them off, and then I'll do the rest of them. Hopefully this will save me some time in the future. The leg casters are now welded on. That was very nice thanks to the Fireball tool welding squares. I wish I would have had those at hand before, a long time ago. I've also gone around and fully welded all the hinge points and things like that. I think the next thing I need to do is to weld the edge casters. Again, this was one of those things where the theory is simple, but an elegant practical solution isn't as obvious. The aim was to be able to somehow keep the legs folded. The mechanism didn't matter very much, just the function. If the legs could remain securely folded, then moving the table around in the folded position would be much easier. Naturally, time is a factor, and I couldn't spend any more time than necessary on this. I also didn't want to create unnecessary things. If the solution was robust and simple, it would be good. Springs and moving parts that needed lubrication or maintenance would not be ideal. I realized that I had the central cross member on the frame and that it would be a good point to attach the legs to. Now I needed a tab for a bolt, but I also needed a positive stop for the legs to rest against. After a bit of head scratching, I realized that the U-channel would provide both, so I proceeded to fabricate 2 stops/tabs from that material. I'm quite pleased with the solution actually. I then needed to lock the other pair of legs on top. More head scratching ensued. After a while I realized that I could use a piece of angle iron welded to the already folded pair of legs. Positioning the angle iron inside the 2 folded legs that basically formed a box section took some fiddling to get right. But I got there in the end, and now the system uses the same locking bolts to hold the legs up and down. The end of another day. I'm hoping this was the penultimate day. The table is now pretty much functionally okay. The table now has got both pairs of legs on. It's got the casters on one set of legs. The legs fold. The legs lock in the up position. The legs lock in the down position. And the end casters are on. So there's a little bit of tuning and trimming to be done. But right now I'm too knackered. So I'm gonna go and grab a cold snack. Right, lads and lassies, this is where I'll cut this episode off. There's a bit more to come in this welding table mini-series. I hope you stick around, and thanks for watching.